Water levels at Lake Mead are rising, and that could help with better access on the lake to boaters and swimmers.
Lake Mead has had several activities this year, from an almost extinct water level to an increase. Also, there have been several reports of various discoveries found in the water body as well. However, as the water seems to be taking a turn, scientists are observing another interesting update on the lake, which seems unexplainable, even terrifying. What did scientists recently discover? Is it a threat to the ecosystem? Stay with us till the end of the video to find out. Lake Mead is located at the Arizona-Nevada border and east of Las Vegas. It's one of the most important water sources in the southwest United States. Its decline threatens water supply and irrigation means for agriculture. As is widely known, the lake has 4 water basins along the river channel. It provides water for cities such as Las Vegas, Henderson, North Las Vegas, and Boulder City, which estimates roughly 25 million people, and electricity to about 1.3 million people. The lake is 28,945,000 acre-feet of water and has the largest capacity in the United States, at its highest point at 248 square miles and 640 square miles. As already known, the surroundings of Lake Mead experienced severe drought over the years. At one point, the water level dropped to 177 feet, something that's never happened since 2000. As a result, the shoreline receded dramatically and caused huge swathes of dry lakebed around the area. Fortunately, there's been an increase in the water level, surpassing many expectations. What caused the increase, and will it be the much-needed intervention needed to revive the lake to its former glory? First, let's start by stating that Lake Mead derives its water source. So far, the local water source formation and groundwater have been responsible. Some of the water in the lake is also created by the snowmelt of the Rocky Mountains into the Colorado River. It's a reservoir of the Hoover Dam. The Hoover Dam was constructed in 1936 as an effort by the residents of Colorado to prevent flooding and provide irrigation to transform the arid region into fertile cropland. It contributes irrigation water for over 2 million acres of land and provides water to over 1.3 million people yearly. The dam has been one of the largest and best ever constructed. It measures about 726.4 feet high and 1,244 feet long. It's also about 3.25 million cubic yards of concrete and has over 4.4 million cubic yards of apparent work. Unfortunately, the Colorado River has been at its lowest with a significant water reduction. Due to climate change, Colorado is experiencing an ongoing drought, which has taken about 83% of its water and surrounded fertile land. However, the major water source for Lake Mead so far has been Lake Powell, which is between Utah and Arizona, and was created due to the overflow of the Glen Canyon Dam. For the most part, Lake Powell is more than supplying water to Lake Mead. It provides several other benefits. Lake Powell is responsible for the major water supply to the lower basin states such as California, Arizona, and Nevada. It's also the second largest reservoir beside Lake Mead. It holds up to 26 million acre-feet of water, an unfailing backup for many decades. This has made the lake a tourist attraction to many and a spot for relaxation, recreation, and leisure. Lake Powell also has captured the attention of researchers and scientists because of its contribution as a major source of hydroelectric power generation. The Glen Canyon Dam is an essential part of Lake Mead's existence because it provides the majority of water supply and electricity for a major portion of the southwest United States and parts of Mexico. A small portion of its water sides the urbanized areas in the southwest, while the majority is used for irrigation. Scientists have decided to put a test on nature and observe how long Lake Mead would survive without the assistance of the Glen Canyon Dam. So, what would happen to Lake Mead if the Glen Canyon Dam was shut down? Let's look at the improvement in Lake Mead's water levels. For decades now, the water level of Lake Mead has been practically crawling and on the brink of totally drying out. Despite being a constant occurrence, this was not the lake state when it was first created. Back in 1983 and 1999, the lake's water level was as high as ever, overflowing into the spillways at Hoover Dam and causing the infamous 1983 flood. So, what happened 40 years ago that caused the lake to go from about 1,225 feet to only about 27% of its original state? The first signs of Lake Mead's filling appeared in late 1934. After over 3 years of constant filling, the lake reached 1,044 feet in April 1937. As of July 1983, the reservoir reached an elevation point of 1,225 feet. Unfortunately, from then on it regressed into decades of decline, falling as low as 1,040 feet above sea level. In 2016, the lake was about 1,074.6 feet and under 79,000 acres. In 2022, the lake reached a historical low, far worse than other reductions since the lake's construction in the 1930s. However, it seems things are looking up for Lake Mead because of the slight increase, 1,047.38 feet, reached in the late February of 2023. Despite the lake using only 30% of its maximum capacity, the increase has changed the expectation of the foreseeable decline of the lake into something more positive. There have been several attempts to limit the effect of climate change and increased water consumption on the lake due to the population dependency. In 2020, the government constructed low-level pumps, a success that greatly improved the soil health and state of Lake Mead. These pump stations were created to allow southern Nevada water retrieval, even in extreme conditions, no matter how low the water level can get. This construction made public how much worse the water's gotten, as well as the extreme limitation of the lake, so much that it needs aid to ensure there would be a zero drop in the future. Despite the pump's construction, the water reduction became far worse in 2022, and there was even more reliance on the pump so people could get water. In fact, the water level became so low that there were suspensions of various recreational activities residents enjoyed. For instance, the low water level prevented swimming, fishing, and boating. Several water restrictions were imposed to ensure the lake doesn't dry permanently. Before the usual passage of all sorts of ships and carriages, only a handful of water vessels are allowed on the lake. This is because not only is the lake unsafe for transport, but it also doesn't have the strength and capacity to bear any pressure. At a water level of 1,047.38 feet, the water is reaching an emergency state, not so far from Deadpool, a state when a water body is 895 feet, cannot flow into dams, has no hydropower, and notoriously, the water is at a state of no return. It goes with the saying, how many more months of extreme weather conditions will it take for Lake Mead to become permanently deleted? Another measure employed to reduce water shortage was an agreed restoration movement by Arizona, California, and Nevada government officials. The plan, according to the Bureau of Reclamation, featured a $200 million meant to fund a swimming pool that'll be used to serve as Lake Mead's water level contribution. The plan also allows for newly developed water conservation systems. Temporary water was to be released and managed by its beneficiaries. This method prevents complete water drainage and reduces the strain of demand on the lake. The plan also includes water conservation by saving about 326,000 gallons of water in the lake annually. Using this plan, there was much less opportunity for total water drainage or soil drying out from lack of moisture. Fortunately, in the winter of 2023, nature seemed to remember it had a duty to fulfill, and the climate condition was favorable enough to cause an increase in the lake's water. Despite a slight increase from its past state, the follow-up was huge. It restored the hope of many and generally met the domestic use of many. How did this happen? Since the past few months, it rose from April 25th to April 30th at about 2.5 feet, pushing the water level to 1,049.73 feet. The increase has led scientists to predict that the lake will rise 1,066 feet and even higher if things keep going as it is. What is the reason for the increase? The answer is simple. The high winter snowpack in the Colorado Rockies has melted during the spring and become a major contributor to the increase. However, despite the relief, it doesn't mean a victory because the climate is still very much unreliable, and should there be a bit of a crisis, the water might even drop to a lower level. Most of the snowfalls occurred in California when strong, constant storms occurred from December 27th through January 17th. The snowfall was abundant early in winter, but scarce after January. The warmth of April brought drying and melting snow to the southwest, and above normal precipitation and cooler temperatures to Oregon and Washington, which inevitably reduced some of the snowpack. The Great Basin and the Colorado River Basin experienced a cool, wet, and snowy year, causing relief from the impact of a major drought that occurred for 3 consecutive years. It was a rare occurrence. Also, it's important to mention that the release volume from Glen Canyon Dam is adjusted each month throughout the water year. Only through this can the inflow to Lake Powell and the storage levels of Lake Powell and Lake Mead be determined. The only thing certain is that regardless of what the future brings, this melted snow just gave the lake a tolerance advantage and bought more time for the lake to resist climate imbalance. Let's discuss the possibilities of Lake Mead overflowing. For many, this might mean getting ahead of ourselves. Comparing the rate of the water increase becoming more rapid than what led to the 1983 flood, chances are Lake Mead will become full again and then overspill. However, looking at the factors that Lake Mead is dealing with, circumstances have changed, and climate change and drought have become an even bigger factor compared to the past. With the unpredictability, the odds of Lake Mead overflowing are as thin as air. It's very unlikely. According to reports, the lake is a huge 160 feet from reaching its peak, while Lake Powell is 120 feet, despite all the snowpack being almost melted. Nevertheless, this still counts as a victory, no matter how tiny it might seem. Despite signs of recovery in 2023, this is only a drop in the lake, as it'll take decades or more for the lake to return to its original state, if it's a possibility. The whole area is still experiencing drought, although not as extreme as before. For 2023, experts believe that although the influx of water has slowed, Lake Mead's levels will not rise much more, especially since the rest of the year is leaning toward warmth. However, there is still a chance that will be determined by the 2023 El Niño that's just begun. The impact of the cycle might result in a severe winter. This would mean cooler temperatures, more rainfall, and a wetter than average season as it commonly occurs in the north of the US, California, and Washington. There might still be a pinch of flow in the prediction because of climate change. The El Niño cycle this time around is already unpredictable as it is. El Niño is known to disrupt global atmospheric circulation and deregulate weather and temperature patterns. It also affects ocean temperatures and the speed and strength of ocean currents, so it's not ideal to expect the usual. While there's no harm in predicting based on observations and past records, the better option for everything related to nature should now be treated with caution and adequate preparation, because, as stated earlier, nature's become unpredictable. Since the recovery of Lake Mead is not happening anytime soon, what are the next steps in place to ensure the sustainability of the lake? One of the common projects to revive the lake is the government water supply cut proposal for all 6 cities, the beneficiaries of Lake Mead. It's been 6 months since the initial proposal, and there's not been a conclusion due to disagreements between the states. The situation of the allocated share is concerning due to the fast approaching spring. Most neighboring states of the river basin have approved the water regulation agreement. However, there has been a slight disagreement in the process. California, which uses the highest proportion of the water supply, has declined to adhere to the water conservation plan. This might be due to the government's concerns about its growing population or extreme dependency on the Colorado River as a water supply source. Also, on August 16, 2022, the Colorado federal government proposed a 2-tier water reduction of Lake Mead and the Colorado River. Their plan expects to limit the amount of water southern Nevada will be allowed to withdraw from Lake Mead. This mandate has been established and practiced since the beginning of January 2023. The reason is due to the declaration of water shortage as an emergency. The several water supply allocations of various water co-users have been decreased until impressive future changes to the lake's water level. The government has also employed the use of the water diversion measure. Water is being directed into Colorado water systems because it's a reliable way to ensure the survival of Lake Powell and Lake Mead. The Colorado River system provides water and electricity to more than 40 million people in 7 states and is endangered. The system has shown alarming water loss after a multi-year climate change-fueled drought combined with decades of overuse. The water diversion has not only been beneficial to Lake Mead, but it's also caused an increase in Lake Powell by extension. Lake Powell has increased to over 5 feet, and more of the increase is to be expected. This is contrary to the prediction made by the US Bureau of Reclamation, which expected the lake's water level to have dropped before September 2023. According to a report from the US Bureau of Reclamation, the water is expected to be about 20 feet below its current level, with the impact that when the water level finally dries up, the electric power supplied to millions will be cut off because the lake's dam turbines will not have enough sources to generate electricity. In 2023, Arizona took a self-imposed 3-year suspension on Lake Mead's usage to encourage water reservation and reduce the population dependency on the lake. This way, there'll be less strain from domestic and industrial purposes. California and Nevada also engaged in the temporary suspension so that Lake Mead's water level could be stabilized. Despite the state's selfless decision, the road ahead is rocky and hard, as decades of heavy reliance on the reservoir have been decades long. However, by the end of 2026, the expiration of the suspension, at least 3 million acre-feet of water would have been saved. To reduce the blow of this water reduction measure, Arizona's created another source of water to rely on. The government has been able to cancel the permits for the 2 drilled wells at the alfalfa farm, which belongs to Saudi Arabia. The farm used the water to grow its alfalfa plants for exports and feed to dairy cattle. The farm doesn't make any payments for the water used, which has been going on for years. According to Attorney General Chris Mays, he stated that the 2 wells had been used to pump over 3,000 gallons per minute out of the groundwater. By estimation, both wells pump the same amount of water an average family of 4 uses monthly. While addressing the water supply problem, Attorney General Mays shared that in this extreme case, all means necessary should be employed to address the growing water crisis head-on before it becomes too late. Although these measures are being imposed for long-term benefit, they've been met begrudgingly and with disdain by some residents. This is likely because many are used to having water abundantly at their disposal, and some people have their livelihood dependent on the lake. The good news that hopefully lies ahead is anticipating the year 2026, when the end result of these sacrifices is expected to reflect. What do you think would happen? Will these temporary suspensions that would inevitably cause hardship to be forgotten because of the positive outcome? Or will it be the beginning of the end of the Colorado River and its tributaries? The question is, what would happen to Lake Mead in 2026? Let's end the video by acknowledging that although the plans to save Lake Mead are imperfect, whatever the development is, it would be more disastrous if there is continual overuse of the water and the government sits back and does nothing. Then the recovery would be truly impossible. What are your thoughts on the future of Lake Mead? Is there any hope for positive expectations in 2026? Share your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click the notification button for updates on new videos.